This is Jerome Corsi, and today is Friday, April 14th, 2023. Thank you for joining us. This is thetruthcentral.com. We are broadcasting every weekday, and we're glad to be back. I'm going to be much more active writing books, writing articles, etc. We'll be telling you where to find things. We're on a lot of different social media channels. Take a look at thetruthcentral.com. Now, today I want to start out with a story that is on oil, because this is, I think, a major issue we're going to have to deal with in terms of the price of everything. The federal government just came out and reported that we were containing inflation, that inflation was now down to 5.5%. Well, that's a great story, but the problem is, if you take a hard look at the internal numbers for the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported, food is up about 8.5%, and oil was depressed in value because for a number of things. One, the economy has been slowing down globally because of the increase in interest rates. But secondly, in general, what we've seen is a very, very warm winter in Europe and the United States. Now, that reduces the amount of oil that was been demanded. But if we take a look at where prices are currently, and this is where this article I think is a bit concerning, is that we're on track now for a fourth consecutive weekly gain in the price of oil. So Brent oil, for instance, is trading above $86 a barrel. We're headed back to $100 a barrel for oil. And with OPEC reducing supply, reducing production, OPEC is planning on keeping the price per barrel high. Now, this article says Russian exports are showing signs of weakening. But if we take a look at what the International Energy Agency is saying, International Energy Agency is saying the contrary. It's saying that Russia is now back to exporting as much oil as Russia was exporting before invading Ukraine. I'll give you the exact quote here. Russian oil exports in March soared to their highest level since April 2020, thanks to surging production flows that returned levels last seen before Russia invaded Ukraine. So Russia's oil export revenues rebounded by $1 billion to $12.7 billion. They were still 43% lower than a year ago, but Russia is gaining again markets, and the gains are in the non-Western countries. The United States is slowing, but is still leading in Western Europe in terms of its oil demands. Clearly, we're much bigger of an economy. But the point is that China has just conducted a oil deal with Brazil in China's currency, the yuan, and China and India have oil demand surging. Now, why is this important? It's important because if we take a look at where we're going in the future, what's next in the economy, the Fed is saying we're going to have a recession. Fed's admitting that. In fact, there's a lot of economists out who are saying the Fed caused the recession by tightening too much. I don't think that's the case. I think inflation's still out of control. But if oil prices continue to increase because of the reduction in supply, we're going to see energy costs go up, which will cause the inflation numbers to rise again. This is not a contained problem. This is a problem that's going to continue, and I don't see that the Biden administration or the Federal Reserve has a good solution for it. Now, I want to next cover this issue about gold, because gold is again now above, it's regularly trading and holding above the price, which I've been saying it's going to continue doing at $2,000 an ounce. It closed yesterday. The spot gold was up to $2,037.68 yesterday on Thursday, April 13th, and that's its highest since March. It's only $35 off the record highs. Now, a gold surge again comes after the Federal Reserve minutes. The Federal Reserve Open Market Committee met on Wednesday, and the policymakers, several of them there in the notes and the minutes, were considering whether we should pause on rate increases. And they're worried that the weakening in the banking sector, Silicon Valley Bank and the others, will throw the economy into recession. If we take a look at the macro level here, what I want you to understand is that we are in a situation where the world, and the United States in particular, has a huge amount of debt. We've allowed the debt of the nation to get to over $30 trillion. That's more than our GDP, our gross domestic product. It means we have a tremendous debt service. We have to continue to pay the interest on that debt. Now, under modern monetary theory, the Democrats seem to think they could just, print a $30 trillion coin and it would pay off everything. But that's not the way it works. That would just lead to more inflation, more printing of money. And the banks right now and the Federal Reserve have bought trillions of dollars of Treasury bonds to help the Treasury fund the debt service. And those bonds were bought with really zero coupon because we were having zero interest rates going back through the Obama administration. This is a systemic problem. It's not going to go away by wishing and hoping. Some of the banks are going to report right now pretty strong profits. I saw JP Morgan Chase came out with some very, very strong profits for the past quarter. That doesn't mean it's going to last or it's going to persist through the system. The banks that are going to be in trouble are going to be the smaller banks, and banks like Silicon Valley, which went on this ESG, this environmentally oriented investment schedule, are making investment decisions based on climate change issues, not on investment issues, not on solid credit issues. And the entire Biden administration is aimed with this big bill they passed, which was supposedly going to be the Inflation Reduction Act, which was really a stimulus program for green energy. We're going back into another ideologically driven period of time where, like the Obama administration did with Solyndra, if you recall, we spent billions of dollars under the Obama administration on wind and solar energy, and largely it failed. Most of those companies went bankrupt. I document that in my book, which I'm going to talk about to different points today. The truth about energy, global warming, and climate change. If you'll notice, I'm emphasizing in everything now the truth. I think we need to get down to what's really going on rather than the narratives, basically the politically correct lies that we're being told that we're not supposed to challenge. The problem is there are laws at work here. The economics operate according to certain fundamental principles, and you can't just wish those away. So we're going to see, I'm predicting, a increase in inflation, stagflation. The economy is going to be stagnant. We do not have policies in place that are economically sound to drive the economy. We've got politically oriented ideological approaches which typically fail. And when the Neomarxists take over, typically the economies are ruined. You found that in the 1930s when Stalin had the collective farms experiment and millions of Russians starved to death. You saw it in China with the Great Leap Forward. All these ideologically driven movements tend to produce economic failure, and we're doing it again. Chris, do you want to have a comment on this? Chris, my producer, and Chris, you're doing a good job. I like the way the show looks. You're doing a nice job getting it together.
Oh, thank you. I couldn't look good without you, though, Jerry. So.
Well, I appreciate that, and thank you for the work you're doing.
It's fun to. Sometimes I sit back and think, hey, we need some of these neo-Marxists around for a few laughs. But sometimes they can cause some serious damage. They seem to think that these failed policies of the last 100 plus years are going to work because, and here's what they tell you, but they didn't do it right.
Right. They always say that. They didn't do it. Stalin didn't do it right. Mao didn't do it right. We're going to do it right. Well, no, the principles they're operating under don't work.
But they did work, and that's the idea. We talked about this earlier this week. good creates, evil destroys. The
Yes.
idea is to destroy history, destroy culture, destroy the system, destroy the economy, and make people dependent on the government.
I'd like you to show a couple things. One is just for a minute, let's go to the sponsors. Please take a look at this gold offering, gold and silver offering by Swiss America. Swiss America has been with us for a long time. I trust them. They're into consultative selling. This Walking Liberty $50 offer is a very good one. These are coins that were minted. They're no longer minted, not for circulation, but they have a very high silver content as compared to the coins we're getting today. And on a one-time offer, introductory offer, Swiss America is ready to say you can have buy up to, I think, 250 of these coins, basically at what they're worth in silver. It's a loss leader for Swiss America, but they want to be able to develop relationships with new customers, and this is a great way to introduce yourself to Swiss America. Just fill out the form. Swiss America will contact you, and you'll be able then to begin getting some consultation from experts at Swiss America. Again, this is a sponsor. I'm not giving you investment advice here. Go to Swiss America for your investment advice. They're the experts. They'll give it to you. And I'm solidly recommending tangible value. Real estate's tangible. You can live in it. It's there. It's physical. Our currency today is increasingly becoming electronic, and you need to have some tangible value. Gold and silver, precious metals are tangible. Now, you can't eat gold and silver, but through centuries, people who have had some gold and silver have been able to eat. Chris, any comments on that?
Oh, it's always good to have that around. The idea is tangible. Something tangible does. That's something everybody understands. Let's put it that way. When the electricity goes out, if we get hit by an EMP attack from China, we can see that, and that's electromagnetic pulse, by the way, for those who don't love the acronyms.
It's exploding a nuclear weapon high in the altitude, and it wipes out the electric grids all across the country. Yeah,
you can't go to your bank.
Right.
Okay? You can't go to your you can't go to your computer and grab the cryptocurrency out of there and put it in your little key. In fact, you can't really use it when you're carrying it around with you. But you're right. Having something tangible like gold and precious metals, which have historically accumulated in value over the years, is likely a good idea. But the best thing to do is talk to these guys, because we're not
Swiss America.
Right.
Okay, now let's go to the Black Sea issue here, because this issue's come up in the last few days, and it's both Finland and Ukraine. Liz Truss, who you might remember was the UK's prime minister for about 20 minutes in 2022. She didn't last very long. She's now saying that Ukraine needs to be fast-tracked into NATO. Says, quote, "I also believe we should fast-track Ukraine's membership of NATO. We should have done that years ago. Best time is to do it now." And she is basically saying that they want to make the Black Sea a NATO sea. Okay, now geographically, if you look at the Black Sea, and this is one of the reasons why Ukraine is so important to Russia, the Black Sea is right on Ukraine. Sevastopol, one of the largest ports under the Black Sea, is Crimea. That area of Ukraine on the Black Sea is very highly coveted, because you can come out through into the Mediterranean and then out through the Straits of Gibraltar into the Atlantic. And it's the same in Finland. If you look at Finland on a map, and you see that what Finland is, it's the country of Norway, Sweden, and Finland. These three countries are very similar in terms of their cultures, but Finland is closest to Russia. Finland is the country that really controls Russia's ability to get out into the Baltic Sea. And the Baltic Sea is, of course, Russia's access to the Atlantic from the north. And a lot of what's going on in Ukraine has to do with two factors. One is geopolitics. Ukraine is coveted by Russia for its access to the Atlantic in the south, really in the central. through the Straits of Gibraltar, and Finland is also coveted for the same reason. And during 1939, when we had the pact between Stalin and Hitler, Stalin moved into both Finland and Ukraine prior to the start of when Russia attacked, when the Nazis attacked Russia, which was later in 1939. So basically, you've got a complex structure here from some very tightly knit countries together, where these European countries have been fighting for centuries. And the wars in Ukraine have been going on such that Ukraine is divided. Half of Ukraine on the western part on the eastern part of the side, the part close to Russia, eastern Ukraine, is largely Russian. The part of Ukraine that's on the west, closer to Germany and Poland, is German oriented and actually Nazi. And we are fighting with Nazi brigades. The United States, NATO, EU are supporting these Nazi brigades in Ukraine. And the truth is, it's not been reported. Again, the truth. It's been reported in a very slipshod way that Russia's losing, that we are really going to have a win here. Well, Russia's conscripting many, many more troops. And what we see in the next article is that Russia's actually about to gain. I think Russia's on the verge of being able to take over this town called Bakhmut, which is right on the, again, if we take a look at where Bakhmut is, it's in the western part, the Russian-controlled part, near the Black Sea, and it is a strategically important town. Russia's been trying to, again, get control of this region, the Donbass, and Russia's now stepped up its campaign in this Bakhmut in eastern Ukraine, close to Russia, and basically wanting to push out the Ukrainian forces, which they're doing. It's been months of bloody fighting. It's also been involving this Wagner paramilitary group that Russia has employed to fight alongside the Russian troops. And the Ukrainians are really taking losses. Now, the Ukrainians constantly are asking for more money. They're constantly asking for the United States to provide more weapons, and NATO and the Biden administration has been willing to do so. And I'm convinced, and I'll probably be writing about this pretty soon, is that money's going to be stolen. Ukraine money that goes in like this to Ukraine disappears. It's historically been the case. It's one of the great places for corruption in the world. Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. And the Biden family was very deeply involved. Now, it looks like new things are coming out all the time on the Bidens. I'm going to wait a little bit until this hits. I want to make sure there's going to be investigations in Congress. Not that the investigations will do anything, but the House can hold hearings. If the Republicans had any guts, they would do it. But, again, the Republicans in Congress today they're Democrat light. They are not really strong in terms of supporting conservative values. I think Mitch McConnell is very compromised. I think many of the Republicans in Congress will tell you what you want to hear. And then they'll work with the Democrats to basically pass the Democrats' agenda. We're right now in control of the country is this Neomarxism that has penetrated the universities. And I don't know how we're going to essentially get rid of it. I've been writing books on it, and I'm doing everything I can to fight this. Chris, maybe you can show on the books, and there's links there to buy the books. My first one in this trilogy is The Truth About Energy, Global Warming, and Climate Change. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute because it basically tells you that oil, natural gas, and coal are abiotic. They are not biological materials. They are not dinosaur soup. No dinosaur ever made a barrel of oil. That's, again, a lie. I've argued against this for years. The peak oil crowd, if you'll remember them, they were active through the 90s. In fact, they were still vestiges of them when Trump came around. By then, of course, they said we were going to run out of oil. They said there were only so many dinosaurs. There could be only so much oil. And so therefore, this guy named Hubert at, I believe, Shell Oil in the 1950s took a napkin one day at lunch and drew a normal curve, which is a one peak curve. It goes up to reach a maximum, and then it goes down to zero. It's a normal curve, normal distribution. That's how numbers. That's just in general a sociological principle. Things tend to fit this curve. We are young, we gain in strength, we reach our maximum strength, and then we get old and it diminishes. That's a normal curve. And it just doesn't work in terms of oil, because oil is not a biotic product. It doesn't come from dinosaurs. It isn't limited. It isn't made in sedimentary rocks. Oil is made in the mantle of the earth. And the chemical equations that explain it, which I have in this book, show you that the Germans in World War II were making synthetic oil because during the Weimar Republic, the German chemists figured out the equations for how oil and hydrocarbon products are made in the mantle of the earth. They can be made synthetically. The equations are pretty simple. You take something that has hydrogen and something that has carbon, and under intense heat and pressure with a catalyst like iron oxide, you can produce a catalytic reaction in which hydrocarbon chains are formed. It's chemistry 101. Of course, it's not generally taught this way because the textbooks still tell you that oil, coal, etc. are made from decaying organic material. They're down to saying it's plankton, that anything organic. It does not take, in these formulas from the Weimar Republic, they don't call for an incantation and you drop in a little chicken part in order to make the catalytic conversion work. It doesn't happen that way. And then the second book, and this is coming out, it's in print, it's in the press right now. It'll be out in a few months. But it's going to be about this Neomarxism, the cultural Maoism, and the anarchy that have dominated our politics. So the first book essentially tells you that the climate science behind global warming is a lie. Second book tells you why it's a lie. Why is it a lie? Because when you combine neo-Marxism and what Mao did with attacking the culture with postmodernism, you have a feeling that you can just create the reality you want. One utopia, this was Herbert Marcuse. I discussed this extensively in the second book. These people lie because they believe that reality is subjective and values are subjective. They're relative. And so you begin to get these gender issues and the like because people believe that there are not fixed rules and that whatever they personally psychologically feel has to be accepted by everyone else as reality. That's fundamentally a definition of schizophrenia. The alternative here is to have rules and natural laws. And what I'm saying is that oil operates by natural laws. A lot of things, virtually everything in this world, God has made, it's rule driven. And if we don't understand the rules, we think we can make up the rules, we're going to be messing up tremendously. Now, I want to use this to segue into the last article I want to cover today, which is a major article in the New York Times, which is saying that essentially we are the solution to America's problems is to go electric. And I'm going to read you a paragraph from this article written in the New York Times today. To tackle climate change, these machines, and that's the ones that, they say there's tiny fires everywhere. Cars, trucks, homes, factories, all burn fossil fuels. That's, again, they constantly say fossil fuels. No fossil ever made a drop of oil. Fossil is silica usually, which is the structure of the animal, but the animal's long gone. We deteriorate. We bury people because we turn into our constituent chemicals and stink. We don't say Aunt Matilda line that casket because she's going to turn into, crude oil number whatever. Aunt Matilda doesn't turn into oil. Bible says dust into dust and not dust into oil. But yet there's fossil fuels, and that's another subtle way that the language is meant to construct the reality, which is a major part of this postmodernism. So to tackle climate change, these machines will need to stop polluting. And the best way to do that, experts increasingly say, is to replace them with electric versions, cars, heating systems, factories that run on clean energy sources like wind, solar, or nuclear power. They're even willing to talk about nuclear power now. For years, the left demonized nuclear power over Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, etc. Now they're willing to say nuclear power. They know that solar and wind will not power the modern industrial state. We right now have only about 12 according to the Energy Information Administration, you can look it up as part of the Department of Energy, U.S. Department of Energy, only about 12.5% of our energy needs come from wind or solar. They're really not a major contributor. And that's after billions and billions of dollars have been spent. Why? Because they don't work. Sun doesn't shine all the time. The wind doesn't blow all the time. You have to store the energy in batteries. Batteries are inefficient. They use up rare earth minerals. They're expensive to produce. Hydrocarbon fuels produce the electricity that we're supposed to believe is magic and will eliminate any climate change, and we'll live in a world that is perfect because we reduce carbon dioxide. Well, that might be true if carbon dioxide were the driver of the Earth's temperature. Unfortunately, carbon dioxide is a trace molecule. It's 0.004%, 4/1,000ths of 1% of the atmosphere. Water vapor is the major 70% of all greenhouse gases. The left doesn't talk about water vapor because hydrocarbon fuels, when they're burned, don't emit water vapor. The point is that the left has demonized hydrocarbon fuels in order to eliminate capitalism. And the end result of these agendas, and the left knows it, is that we live poorer lifestyles. And that's what the left basically wants. So lower the standard of living and redistribute income as a consequence. Now, I was very intrigued today by an article that appeared in climatedepot.com. I didn't list it here, but I'm going to refer to it. Mark Morano, who, by the way, I dedicated my book to Mark Morano. Mark Morano is, I think, one of the real warriors combating this climate change movement. He was on a program yesterday on One American News, and he essentially said that the EPA, which has mandated that by 2032, which is really 9 years from now, we're going to have 67%, 2/3 of all vehicles will have to be electric. Right now, today, only about under 6% of all cars sold are electric. Again, they're not taking off. They're very expensive. The charging stations are not readily available. It's going to be, we get this much electricity generated. I mean, wake up, people. It's going to be that much more hydrocarbon fuels used to generate the electricity. And the strain on the grids will be tremendous. Now, what Morano says is basically that mandating car shortages, which is being done by a group of bureaucrats who are ideologically driven in Washington, probably who don't even drive their cars to work. They probably take the metro in Washington and are clearly out of the university system, which has made them, oriented with the Neomarxism. What Morano says is mandating that 2/3 of all cars by 2032 will be electric is really mandating that there are people to use public transportation. A lot of people won't be able to afford cars. There'll be fewer cars bought. I mean, I guess perhaps in the city, if you don't go very far and you need to drive the distances you need to drive in states like Kansas or New Mexico or Arizona or the West in general, where you drive huge distances, you don't have to worry about recharging. But the point is not everything's going to be a Tesla. And, nicely designed car and looks beautiful, and it could be virtue signaling. Look, I'm saving the environment. This is essentially another engineering of the population. In other words, by a legislative, it's not a legislative rule. This is a regulation from Michael Regan's EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. And you can just wave a magic wand and say everybody's going to have electric cars. Even Europe is backing away from this because it doesn't work. And the basic thing about the truth central is I want to emphasize for you things that do work. This leftist agenda doesn't work. It's not truth-based. It's an ideologically based lie, and its real aim is to reduce our standard of living. Chris, any final comments before we wrap up?
I can tell you this. I have seen some of these electric cars, and the Teslas are beautiful. I get that. They do cost a lot. And like you were saying, though, not every family is going to be able to afford a Tesla. They will be stuck on public transportation. If you live in a city like New York, maybe Washington or Philadelphia, which has some pretty good inner transportation systems, that might be okay. But if you're a commuter, unlike maybe Westchester, Rockland County, or certain areas in New Jersey, where I live, slightly north of that, where there are a lot of commuters, they need to drive because there aren't enough trains coming and there aren't enough buses going back and forth to the city or anywhere else where one might need to commute. That's an issue going forward as well. But these are things people don't think about when they're virtue signaling, especially those in Washington.
Well, and the idea that electricity, is going to be solving everything I guess because electricity, you don't see it, whereas oil somehow or coal seems dirty to people. I think that's always been one of the problems. But the fact is that the energy efficiency of hydrocarbon fuels and their availability, they're cheaply available if we would allow the industries, the various oil industries to produce, we could have abundant energy at reasonable prices. We don't have to be paying $80 a barrel, even inflationary numbers. I mean, I think $100 oil is coming pretty quickly with the reduction in production that OPEC has set. And I think Russia is clearly aiming to increase its production and OPEC to reduce its production. And China's demand is soaring. China's using more coal than anyone else in the world and has no intention of stopping, despite saying, China's going to be, net zero emissions very quickly. And it's all ideologically, it's all lies. And it's a narrative. It's hoping and wishing. It's, we will create our ideal future in words, and then we will imagine the future like John Lennon's song. Imagine there was no God. Imagine there was no religion. Imagine there were no countries. Well, imagine there was no John Lennon. I mean, the point is that these realities are true. You have to, they're not going to go away because people want solar and wind to work. Chris?
Well, the Beatles would have gotten another singer anyway. So, hey, they got another drummer pretty quick. So,
well, they did all right for their time, and they produced some great music.
Right.
But when John Lennon starts getting off onto imagine there's no God, God's saying imagine there's no John Lennon.
Well, it's pandering to the masses. It's about making a hit. That's what it is.
And I always say, in the end, God always wins. We're going to wrap it up with that. And John Lennon can deal with God in his own fashion. I'm sure he did. As we end up, today is Friday, April 14th, 2023. We're broadcasting every weekday. And we intend to continue to follow and decode for you as much as we can this news so you understand what's the underlying dynamics here. I see that Donald Trump has now gone through 7 or 8 hours of questioning. Our justice system is, again, ideologically driven. And I went through it with Mueller wanting to put me in prison. I would not take the plea deal. I did not lie. They never indicted me. And the system is driven up clearly in an anti-conservative way. And with the Department of Justice even now investigating Catholics as white supremacists because they like the Latin Mass, we have a Department of Justice that's a political operative that might as well be the KGB or the Stasi in communist Germany. So there's a lot here to talk about, and I'm writing books and we'll be writing more. Please take a look at our sponsors. People say I'm looking younger. Well, take a look at My Vital C and our sponsors. We have a book on that coming out later this year. I'm writing as many books as I can to get these words out. And that's why I'm back broadcasting again, to try to bring the truth to you in this time, this age of disinformation. We'll be back next week. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, my producer, Chris. In the end, God always wins. God will win here too. Thank you for joining us. God bless.